IU fans, your painstaking, heart-beating, nail-biting, gut-wrenching football fandom somehow finished with an Indiana win on Saturday as IU stuck it out, fought from multiple deficits throughout the game, and knocked off the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers and their weird mascot 33-30 at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington. We're going to dive into our initial thoughts and ask some thought-provoking questions on this podcast episode. Look, IU football is like a Rorschach test. If you ask 100 people what they think about this team right now, you'll probably get 100 different answers. So we'll give you a couple thoughts from our end and look ahead to this first road game Indiana has on their schedule, and it's a doozy as the Hoosiers take on the Cincinnati Bearcats. We'll talk about all this and so much more here on episode 264 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Monday, September 19th, 2022. I'm your host, Nathan Krishnan. Here with me tonight is Indiana HQ contributor Charlie Mason, as well as our normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Charlie, you were there start to finish, pregame to press conference. What was that like? Indiana looked so bad for so long, but they hung in there, they hung in there, they hung in there. And before you know it, Charlie Campbell bombed home a 53-yard field goal. 3 weeks in the books. Charlie, talk to us about Western Kentucky and Indiana on Saturday.
You know, I feel like I'm repeating myself when I say it was one of the best games of football I've ever seen. Not in terms of how well the Hoosiers played or how well the Hilltoppers played. Just the thrill alone was enough to keep fans there this game.
Don't tell Tom Allen
halftime.
Tom Allen didn't like how many people were
Tom
left
Allen,
at the end there, and
Tom
I don't blame
Allen
him.
A joke, yeah.
I don't blame him.
But honestly, it was a roller coaster. Two of the most streaky teams I've ever seen play football, on and off. They were trading drives. I know there was like 15 minutes of like 10 points being scored and then 15 minutes of 40 points being scored. It was ridiculous to watch. But it was, in the end, people are saying it was a contender for game of the year, which I don't know. I don't know about that, but it was definitely thrilling. Definitely thrilling.
Yeah, it kept your attention. If nothing else, ESPN had Western Kentucky's win probability above 96% after their field goal on 4th and 2 that gave them an 8-point lead before Indiana's final drive, where, kind of like that Illinois game to start the season, Connor Bazelak, he had a little bit under 4 minutes on this drive, but he got Indiana down the field, ended up hitting Cam Camper for the touchdown. I think he found it was Donovan McCulley for the 2-point conversion. Matt, on one hand, Indiana's halfway to bowl eligibility. On the other, you saw a team that basically would have lost this game if it weren't for Western Kentucky missing a 44-yard field goal, or a Western Kentucky team throwing a stupid interception in the red zone, or a Western Kentucky team throwing the ball away on a fumble late in the game. There's luck involved. What were your thoughts on Indiana's win on Saturday?
I didn't think there was any luck involved in the way the game ended. But I thought no, I'm serious. I like the kick they missed was a block. Okay.
At the end. Yeah.
That was
the end of regulation. The end of regulation.
That was a play that was made.
Yeah.
The fumble was a play that was made by the defense. Like, they forced that.
True.
And the interception was forced. It was not like it was a terrible throw. Our guy took it away. So those, I don't think are flukes. Now, them missing of the other field goal, that was a fluke. We'll take that. But sometimes in sports, you got to get some luck on your side, and Indiana had that because they definitely did not have the refs this game. So if you're not going to have the refs, you got to have some luck. It's got to even out somehow. Indiana pulled it out at home. Now, the game was way too close for comfort. right? I don't think that's a great Western Kentucky team. There's a lot of problems, including the defense. Yeah, they have a, bend but not break mentality. Well, they broke a lot this game. There was a lot of broken coverages, a lot of missed coverages, a lot of missed tackles. There was some chips in the armor for that defense, but they made plays late that won the game. The offense did enough to win the game. They did barely enough, but a C+ is still passing. So this team has squeaked by an Idaho team that they probably should have lost to, especially if they come out and play the second half like they did the first.
Of course.
And then on the Western Kentucky team that I don't think are world beaters, but I don't think are necessarily tragic in any way. So I'm still not sold on this team. I have no idea, because I said I'll tell you what I think about this team after the Western Kentucky game. And I'm telling you, I guess I'll tell you what I think about the team after the Cincinnati game, because this team is so hit or miss, up or down. The play calling is bad on one drive, and then it's actually pretty good the next drive. Our offensive line can't block. We can't run the ball, and then all of a sudden they break off like 9-yard runs with Josh Henderson. This team is so hot and cold.
It's what Charlie said. Yeah,
they're streaky, but they're not even just streaky. It's like they just randomly I'll start trying now. It's like I'll take the ankle weights off now, and we can play the game. So I really don't know what to think going into the Cincinnati game. Cincinnati's a much better opponent, and it's our first away game of the season. So again, I think we'll actually find out way more about this team and the staff and how things are progressing as the week goes on, as the game goes on this Saturday. But overall impressions is what a doozy of a game.
Yeah. And I don't know how they did it. I really don't. I watched the majority of that game on Saturday, and I'm sitting here and I'm watching every offensive play that Indiana runs. And it looks so painstaking, right? Either Basilak's under pressure, or Basilak's throwing to a contested receiver, or he's checking it down to a release valve option. On the other hand, I'm watching Western Kentucky run beautiful trick plays, and they're hitting NFL wide receivers on the perimeter, and Corley and Davis. Their tight end is flying down the seam. Their Robichaud, their running back, was finding gaps. I'm sitting here thinking, wow, Davion Irvin Poindexter transferred to Conference USA, and he's going to win a game at Memorial Stadium. And then Indiana, and this is, I keep going back to this. This was a Tom Allen win. This was a Tom Allen win where the offense kind of looks terrible and the defense gives to some degree, but they just buy into him and his mindset and his mottos and his beliefs. And it's Miles Jackson getting that interception. You're right, man. Indiana forced that mistake. And then it's the fumble. It's the block kick. Jalen Williams flies off the edge. He makes that play. This wasn't a low trajectory kick. By the way, Western Kentucky's kicker was a special teams player of the year coming into the season for Western Kentucky's experience. Brendan Narveson knows what he's doing. You may see him and or Charlie Campbell in the NFL eventually. And of course, Indiana almost returned that block kick for a touchdown. They were that close to winning it there off that mistake. And I'm sitting here and saying, this just felt like a Tom Allen win. This is exactly, he's 14-1 now in non-conference games. The only loss came to Cincinnati last year, Memorial Stadium. And it's one of these really, 2-10 happened. Everyone knows that. Everyone's aware of that. But I'm looking at this and I'm saying, look, this is a Tom Allen win in the way that, you just keep fighting, you keep scrapping, and you keep clawing. And they believe in him as a coach. The one thing you can say is fans may be frustrated all across Hoosier Nation based on how this team looks. But at the end of the day, not only are they winning, every single one of these players are fighting on every play. After plays, I saw guys hugging. And, you obviously saw the celebration at the end with Charlie Campbell. Everyone is just so committed. I saw Jack Tuttle on the sideline. He is a couple yards out onto the field, communicating to his teammates, completely committed to this program. And Indiana may lose every game the rest of the way. They very well could, because the clay that Tom Allen is using to mold this team is a bit funky, smells a bit weird. It's a little bit rotten. It's a little bit spoiled, but it's not premium, European clay that sculptors use, the prime artists use. But looking at this, and I'm saying Illinois is kind of better than we thought. Western Kentucky is going to rattle off a few wins here. Charlie, I don't know. Does this Indiana program deserve more credit than they're getting right now? The computers are saying Indiana's getting fluky wins. Everyone's projecting Indiana to lose a bunch of games coming up. They're 17.5-point underdogs now to Cincinnati. Through 3 games, does this team deserve more credit than they're getting?
I'm going to play the optimist here. I think they do deserve more credit than they're getting, because the credit isn't there. I don't know that they're getting any credit. The only credit that I see is a 3-0 next to their name. That's it. That's the only credit I see. So yes, I think they deserve a little bit more than that. Obviously they're ranked number 1 in the Big Ten East right now, but that doesn't mean anything.
That's
it means
right.
0.
I like that.
It doesn't mean much at all. It's cool to see. It's awesome to see. It's not going to last, but it's awesome to see. I do think that this Cincinnati game, though, is going to be a test. And I'm going to agree with Matt. I'm going to come back next week and see what I really think about this team. And the credit right now, I think, should be, they should raise the bar a little bit, give them a little bit more. They need the confidence going into a tough away game. But this team's doing a lot right. They're doing a lot wrong, but they're doing a lot right, too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I think even if they go and lay an egg in Cincinnati, I feel like I'm saying at the end they kind of still beat Illinois, Western Kentucky. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, Matt. I'm looking at this and I see Cam Jones putting up an amazing performance once again. 13 tackles and a forced fumble. I saw Charlie Campbell drill those 4 field goals, including the game winner. I'm asking you this, though. It's the $1 million question. And Charlie, this will come back to you too. What should matter more right now? The results, the fact that Indiana's 3-0 and they had to win these 3 games. And at the end of the day, they did. Or how it looks, which is, again, defensive mistakes, inefficient offense, except when they catch fire on random drives in each game. Is it what matters more, the fact that the sausage is made or how it's being made? Because Indiana's got the record, but it looks a little rough.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. If Charlie's the optimist, I'm gonna go be the pessimist here. I think, when it comes to sausage, right, I'd like to know that my sausage doesn't have rat poison in it. So it doesn't matter if it's being made poorly and poisoned to me, I might have an issue with it. So count me in the I don't believe it until I see us actually prove it with some, not even style, with some consistency, because it's not even like we're winning pretty, we're consistently winning terribly. So there hasn't even been a half where I've been like, wow, we've really outplayed this team. Because Western Kentucky beat us as far as total yards gained and total yards of offense. And you can come at me and tell me, oh, that's a Tom Allen defense, it gives up yards, but doesn't break. Like, they gave up 30 points, and they, as they weren't like they were starting with good field position every drive. There was plenty of drives where we punted it and they were starting at their own 5 or 6 or 10, and they're sitting there and they're driving the whole length of the field on us. And that's confidence building, especially for a team like Western Kentucky coming in and want to compete against a Big Ten team. And I go and I think I see how many yards Western Kentucky ran for us. Robichaud had 135 yards on 14 carries. He's averaging 9.6 yards per carry. And
even if you take out his big one, he was at 13 for about 75.
exactly.
which is another 5, almost 6 yards there,
5-6 yards of carry.
even without the huge
Cincinnati is going to run for 250 yards on us. Like,
or throw for 250. Western Kentucky didn't have problems there either.
329 on 33 of 43. You know, to be fair to the defense, they did force a pick, right? And
Yes.
if you're going to let him do some dinking and dunking, and doing the short yards, you better make him pay when he throws into one-on-one coverage on the outside. And they did that once this game, and that's all we asked for them to do. But as far as I'm concerned, the team is just so inconsistent, and it looks honestly poorly coached at times. As far as, especially the offensive line looks terrible. The defense missed tackles, missed coverages. Like, I don't know how many times I think there was like 2 times that Western Kentucky scored on completely blown coverages. Guy just not covered at all, is just standing alone in the end zone or on the way to the end zone, running just completely wide open. Can stop. It could have done a mariachi dance half like on the goal line and gotten in on a couple of them. So that needs to be fixed, and that's poor coaching, and that's our head coach calling the plays and helping run the defense. So what is happening on that side of the ball? Running game can't get started, and we're committed to running the ball for way too long in the first half when it's obviously not working, and whatever you're trying to do isn't working, which is shades of Nick Sheridan. To credit Walt Bell, to credit Walt, our boy,
Mustache man.
He changed up the play calling, went more screens, went more plays, got Bazelak on the move or the pocket going one direction or another, or he did some stuff, to get buy some time for our QB to make plays, and it ended up helping us win the game. But you can also go back and say he almost lost us the game, because I have no idea what that final drive in overtime was. We have the ball at the 25 to start our overtime, and we went 3 negative plays in a row. What are we doing?
You could have just QB sneaked it.
What are we doing? So again, like, for me, it's like this team has done nothing to give me confidence, and yet they are 3-0. So to me, it's like, well, it could be that they just had a rough start. There are some promising elements to this, and they could piece together some winning elements, and they might make the bowl game, right? They might win another 3 games. But my brain says there's no way we even cover 17, right? There's no way we're even in the game at Cincinnati, which means, and I look at the rest of our schedule, the only win I see on this is against the hapless, terrible, unbelievably atrocious Nebraska, and that's next week. So
after Cincinnati.
After Cincinnati, right? It's the week after next weekend. So I am sitting here very, very confused.
It's the ultimate football Rorschach test. It really is. Look, if you look at the computers, they hate Indiana right now.
I hate Indiana right now.
They say Indiana's the 82nd rated team in college football. The S&P Plus ratings have Indiana at 92nd in offense in the FBS. They have Indiana at 64th on defense. The Jeff Sagarin ratings are a little bit more forgiving. He's got Indiana 69th, nice, in the country, at a 3-0 record. I think there's one scenario here that could very well play out, and that fact is,
are you telling me you've seen the future about 7 million times?
That
there's only one possibility.
The fact is that Indiana could lose each of the Cincinnati, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State games by 40 points each.
Yep.
They really could.
Yep.
At the same time, if this team gets into these weird, funky, strange games against Maryland and Rutgers and maybe Michigan State and Purdue and Bloomington, and it's coming down to the final play or a big kick, and it's Charlie Campbell taking that kick, Indiana could end up with a hilariously negative point differential on the season and win 6 games. Because Charlie Campbell, and I know he had a rough game against Idaho, but this guy's an NFL kicker. If he doesn't play at the next level, I have no idea what these coaches are evaluating, especially when I've looked at the first couple weeks of the season and have seen some really hairy kicking at the highest level.
Yeah.
This guy's an NFL kicker, and I'm sitting here and I'm saying, whether it's against Nebraska, whether it's against Maryland and Bloomington, or whether it's at Piscataway against Rutgers, or whether it's at home against Purdue, if you're finding yourself in one of these weird, 2017, 24, 23, 27, 24 type games, Indiana's going to be better off than a lot of their opponents because they've got Charlie Campbell and they've got that unending relentlessness in those games where they're really stuck in the trenches, on the football field against someone who's about equivalent to who they are. It's fascinating. I mean, Charlie, I know I've been talking about Indiana could get wrecked in a few games here, but to this point at 3-0, what do you think matters more? Is it the fact that they are getting these wins, or the issues that you see deep underlying in this program? Rough time running the ball, Bazelak under pressure a lot, relying on some wonderfully timed turnovers that they're forcing. Which way are you leaning on that?
Everybody said IU should have won the first 3 games. Everybody said that. Everybody's like, IU should have won the first 3 games. But nobody would have been shocked if they didn't. Yeah. Like nobody would have been like, oh, well,
especially the way they play.
IU. Exactly. They would have been like, oh, that's just IU. So these look like artificial wins because everybody counted IU out for the season and said these are going to be the only 3 they're going to win. This is it. It's these 3 games. They're breaking the expectations already. Okay, let's put it that way. They broke the expectations. If they didn't break the expectations that we had in the preseason for this team, they definitely did at halftime the expectations that we had for the second half, the fourth quarter. They've been breaking expectations slowly. They're a momentum team. I talked about how they were streaky, hot and cold. But I think there are problems on the field in the game that are unforgivable. Things that IU will not, if they don't fix, will never see a score over 20 for the rest of the season, possibly 14. I mean, the way the defense, to their credit, did a great job, better job than the offense, in my opinion, a lot better job than the offense during the game as a whole, overall.
Yeah.
But those big runs from, was it Robichaud?
Yep.
Robichaud, on third downs after, the crowd's standing, the fans are, like, and then a 36-yard run right up the middle to kill the vibe, ruin the flow of the game. And it kind of speaks to how I think this IU team is going to play the rest of the season. I think they're a team that thrives on momentum, play by play. But I think they're also a team that's going to thrive on momentum game by game. So I think they're going to go into Cincinnati with this 3-0 record, that artificial 3-0 record.
Still counts.
And
though.
either they're I mean, they're either going to get blown out or they're going to somehow walk away with a 7-point loss. I think it's going to be one of the two. And I mean, if they win, oh my God, if they win, could you imagine? I couldn't even imagine. If they win, it's just going to propel them further. They're just building on the momentum until inevitably somebody on the coaching staff makes a call that just knocks it out. And as soon as IU starts to lose, the whole season's kind of going to crumble. I think they've been delaying that inevitability these first 3 games. But I do think that, back to the original question, I do think that there are problems on the field. What they're doing on the field matters more than the record that they're showing. So,
yes.
It'll be fascinating to see how this plays out. We've got a lot more coming up here. I did ask this question on the Hoosier Sound podcast poll that you can vote in over on our Twitter account at the Hoosier Sound. What's your current IU football state of mind? I asked all of you, and man, the votes are really flying in here, and this poll's been only up for about an hour or so. Right now, the majority of folks are saying wins are wins. 3-0, baby. 68% voted for that option. 32% has said, look, IU's driven by a lot of luck, a lot of good fortune. They have to play better, really get into their underlying issues. 32% voted there. I like the comment from Tyler Johnson here on our poll. He says really both options. I'm certainly not complaining about 3-0, but I do feel like we could easily go winless against the rest of the season. Tyler believes all three of those games so far have been more lost by the other team than won by IU. I personally disagree with that. I think that IU actually did what they had to do on the final drive against Illinois to win that game. They did what they had to as far as forcing mistakes against Western Kentucky. In an ideal scenario, Indiana would have been playing from ahead in both of those games. But of course, IU football is far from ideal. We're going to be diving into so much more here on this podcast in a moment. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And we continue on this particular segment of this podcast to compliment Indiana's women's soccer program, who have put up a program record 720-minute scoreless streak to start the season. It's an absolutely absurd run over the course of 8 matches to this point. Indiana's won 2 of them, drawn 6. It's a record, just to be clear, it's tied the program record, but the most impressive performance came over the weekend when Indiana held 8th-ranked Penn State to a 0-0 draw at the Bill up on Fee Lane in Bloomington. The Penn State Nittany Lions, a top 10 program, but Jamie Gerstenberg held the fort down with 8 saves in that match. Indiana is a fascinating team to watch. If you don't have the BTN Plus subscription, would highly recommend getting it to watch them. And the men's soccer team, of course, you can also go in person. Not this week, though. Indiana has a 2-game road trip coming up to Minnesota and Wisconsin. Don't let me hold you back. If you want to jump in the car, head up to Minneapolis or Madison to watch this team. Go ahead and do it. The Hoosiers' next home game comes September 29th against Ohio State. This is a good time. Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I have a quick shout out for who won the week, and that's Mike Penix. Our boy won the week for sure. I think his performance. I know he's not a Hoosier. It's Hoosier won the week, but
still counts.
He's still.
I think nowadays transfers deserve perfectly equal love on this Who Won the Week episode. Transfers are part of life now.
Yeah, and Mike Penix is now a Heisman contender. So congratulations to Mike Penix and our guy Kalen DeBoer. So.
Washington Pac-12 contender, dark horse college.
Dark horse. They look better than Oregon.
Pretty better than
I don't know about USC, but they look better than Oregon.
Utah already took an L to Florida earlier this year. I can't wait to see how this all plays out. Of course, it's funny that through 3 weeks, the only Big Ten East team to lose is Michigan State to Washington in that game up in Seattle. Great environment, primetime, under the lights. It was beautiful to see. It's a good reminder, though, folks, whether it's for Michael Penix updates or IU women's soccer updates, football, men's basketball, men's soccer, all across the board. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, no cost to you. All you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. Charlie, look, this team has a lot of concerns. We've mentioned them in passing on this podcast. Tom Allen has cited that the offensive line is a work in progress. He was very disappointed in the defensive performance. Allen, to paraphrase his comments in Saturday's game, basically said we got a lot to improve on, but having this 3-0 record is a good foundation from which to get better. As you look at all the problems on this team, Charlie, yes, they're 3-0, but what's the biggest concern to you going forward as Indiana really has a Big Ten type schedule the rest of the way? Cincinnati is a non-conference opponent, but they might as well be in the Big Ten.
I think the number one concern that Tom Allen needs to focus on right now is figuring out a way to effectively get to the red zone. They were 6 for 7 on scoring in the red zone, which is, it's what you want to see. You should be.
Some
when
more
you're in the red
touchdowns.
zone, you should score some more touchdowns. Yeah. But getting there is the problem. 6 out of 7 looks too good to tell the story of that WKU game. It just sounds a lot better than WKU was 4 for 5. And look at the score. I mean, it was the fact that IU snuck away with that red zone. I mean, they just couldn't get there. That's what I think that Tom Allen needs to focus on, is getting to the red zone. Whether you start on your own 40-yard line, which happened a lot, and not being able to get across the half, they need to stop with the 3-and-outs. They need to figure out a way to establish a run game and then not go right back to the run after a 6-yard run, because they seem to get lost in sticking with what works and then eventually biting it on like a 3-yard loss on a pitch or something. IU needs to figure out an offense that works, that gets them to the red zone, where they do what every team should do in the red zone, and that's put points on the board.
Yeah, and I guess, Charlie, you can't reinvent the wheel, right? At this point, it's too late to devise a whole new offensive system. But as you look at this particular offense, what's the one adjustment you would like to see? You're there each week. You're seeing this team in person. What's the one adjustment you would like to see this team make that if they fix, they can really get to that next level offensively?
I think that's bringing in the third wide receiver in
McCulley,
Donovan
right?
McCulley. Yeah, Donovan McCulley. I think they need to establish that. They need to establish him as the third wide receiver, open up the field a little bit, throw some posts. And then I think, especially against Cincinnati, who lost a lot of their secondary last year, I think expose them deep, because McCulley's got some speed. So does Matthews. So does Camper. That's what they need to do.
Camper's a really good wide receiver. I love Camper.
Yeah, same. I mean, and look, Camper is basically on the field every play. It's interesting when you look at sort of the PFF play-by-play data. DJ Matthews is on the field for not even 50% of the snaps for the Hoosiers right now. Tom Allen and Walt Bell are very much managing his count, and I don't blame them. A healthy DJ Matthews unlocks this offense, and even if that means holding him back a little bit from a snap count perspective, you need to have him for Michigan State, Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland, Ohio State, Purdue. Matt, but the same question goes to you. What's the biggest concern in your eyes? And that sort of parlays into what's the biggest adjustment you need to see this offense make if they are going to take those next steps and try to become a better football team overall.
Sorry, what was the first half of the question?
What's the biggest concern you're seeing right now on this football team? Because there are a lot to pick from.
Offensive line.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, in both the run game and the pass game. Actually, not even the pass game they're passable in the pass game, for lack of a better word. But as far as the run game goes, no holes. I'm sorry. Like, Sean Shivers is a speed back, which means he needs to get into space in order to make speed, right? He's got to get downhill. He's got to have room to work. He's getting met in the backfield like 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Okay, every play they are meeting him at the handoff. That's unacceptable. Okay, you just got to win your assignments. You gotta win your assignments. You got to win your matchups as an offensive lineman, and they're not winning a lot of them. Like it's like a 40 to 60% split. The defense is winning, and that's not great if you're on offense. So again, they got to work something out, whether it's getting the line on the move, whether it's just getting the running backs on the move, whether it's almost completely abandoning the run, establishing the pass first, and then running the ball. That might be something to look at as well. But you're not going to be able to beat offenses by beat defense a lot by just throwing the ball, especially when we get up against the big boys, because I look at Michigan's defensive line. I watched a bit of that Michigan game at the same time as watching the IU game, and their defensive line, they don't have the star power, but they're deep, and they're going to throw numbers at you, and they're going to pressure the quarterback. And we've shown, and especially Bazelak has shown, pressure, when he gets pressure, he just throws the ball away, and that's going to mean a lot of 3-and-outs and not a lot of scoring against a high-powered Michigan offense. Ohio State, same way. They almost dropped 80 on Akron. And
Toledo,
honestly,
yeah.
on Toledo, sorry.
Yeah.
One of the little schools.
Yeah. Don't want to offend the whole state. Yeah.
Yes. Don't want to offend the whole state. They almost dropped 80 on Toledo. Like, holy Toledo. And, their offense is good, and we can't really give them the ball, which means we're gonna have to keep the ball, but that's hard to do when your offense can't run the ball, so you can't milk time. And then there's Michigan State, who lost to Washington in Washington in a game that they looked like they were drunk, high, and hungover at the same time.
Wow.
They still had flashes of that Michigan State team from last year, which is they can stop the run, and Peyton Thorne's gonna do Peyton Thorne things on you and just somehow pull a really good play out of his butt. So the teams that we're playing, the good teams that we will be playing in the Big Ten East, are gonna have a heyday with our weaknesses. So, and especially when it comes to the offensive line. So for me, again, the answer is fix the offensive line by putting in some movement, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's running power plays and pulling the left guard over to the right guard and running to the right, whether it's completely abandoning the run and going with bubble screens on the outside as a pseudo run game and going into screens more, like do something like that to just keep teams honest, because when you just go and drop back and you force Connor Bazelak to throw it 55 times, it's not going to work out well against teams that are better than Western Kentucky.
Can I be honest for just a second?
Mm.
Why does Indiana run such a fast tempo offense? Like, do we really need to be doing like?
I have an answer for this. I have an answer for this.
Let me hear it.
Because when you're in rhythm, it's very hard to stop, and it wears defenses down. And it even though you might not have the time of possession, you're running so many plays, and they're running and they're not stopping. They don't get 20 seconds to breathe, right?
Yeah.
That affects the defense way more than running play. Okay, here's 45 seconds of rest, and then another running play, and then 45 seconds of rest. And now it's a passing play. Now I have to actually run down the field and cover something. You can break down a defense that way, and not have to run as many plays or milk the clock a lot. But what it does is, when it's not working, it completely messes up your defense, because now the inverse happens, where your defense is stuck out there multiple times, 3 and out. They're back out after only like maybe a minute and a half of rest, maybe 5 minutes if there's a TV timeout, 5 minutes of rest, and they're back out there again, right? Yeah. So it's if it's working, you run a million plays and the other defense eventually breaks down and you score a bunch of points. Or 2, you just get blown out by 40. There's no in between.
So you actually pitched. You told a pretty convincing story there. I'm not gonna lie, because you are seeing Indiana, I guess, sort of pound their opponents into submission in the fourth quarter. And, it's Indiana's best quarter against Illinois was the fourth quarter, or at least the last drive. Indiana's best quarter, sort of best stretch of offense in this game was at the end against Western Kentucky. And I also see the argument for it if Tom Allen and Walt Bell and this staff wanted a bunch of data points to go off of after the first 3 games, right? The only way you get better is by knowing what worked and what didn't, and your first 3 opponents gave you that opportunity. But going forward, I want to see this team slow this thing down, or at least mix it up, right? Mix it up, and that means, slow things down a little bit more frequently, because far too often it feels like half the guys know what they're doing on a particular play, and it doesn't always have to be the same 4, 5, 6 guys on the offense each time. But I'm just sitting here and I'm saying, look, if you just maybe took a breather. Look, there are a lot of new names on this team, a lot of new faces. There's positional switches, there's new guys coming in because your starting center gets hurt in warmups, right? Like, I think there's a situation where you perhaps slow things down just a touch. And if you can do that, you maybe become a little bit more efficient, right? You just become a little bit more efficient. I'm not talking about turning around your offense 180 degrees. Look, Indiana ran 90 plays against Western Kentucky with 484 yards, 5.4 yards per play. Look, if they become a 5.8 yards per play offense or 6 yards per play offense, if they're able to just slow it down a little, and of course you're also facing tougher defenses that have more depth on their roster, I'm sitting here saying, okay, that's something I can get behind. Now, I also want to see some new players that maybe aren't getting enough playing time. Charlie, I saw Aaron Steinfeld make a really nice catch down the field to gain 14 yards on a 3rd and 15 to move the ball further down the field. I saw James Bamba have a nice catch out of the tight end position. Of course, he's injured. We'll see how this develops over the course of the next few weeks. I'd like to see a little bit more usage out of the tight ends. I would like to see more Aaron Steinfeld. I would like to see Indiana use AJ Barner a little bit more. Charlie, there are a lot of players to choose from here that maybe aren't getting enough playing time. You think about maybe Jalen Lucas or Khalil Benson on the O-line, or Josh Henderson or Donovan McCulley or Malachi Holt-Bennett or Anderson Gobi. I mean, of the guys on this roster on both sides of the ball, who are some players, maybe even just one of them, if you can come up with one, that you want to see a little bit more here going into the Cincinnati game?
Yeah, I definitely want to see more of Jalen Lucas. I know he's a freshman. People are, but they let him take the kickoff returns, which it's nice. Let him get like 3 or 4, attempts a game. But the guy has some speed that would just add to the wide receiving room what other teams can't say they have. Having Matthews out there, Camper, add in Lucas, get McCulley some more time, get him in a couple more snaps. Those 4 on, I don't know, on a 5-out type of play it's a crazy combination. And I think it's something that IU could use to their advantage against these big dogs that are coming up. Obviously, the secondaries on the teams that are going to play are going to be incredible. But speed is speed. Athleticism is athleticism. And Jalen Lucas, I don't know if he's ready. We haven't seen what we saw him catch. Was it his first pass this weekend?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, we saw him catch his first pass this weekend. And I mean, he caught it. He caught it. So for this IU team, that's as much as you can ask for.
That's true. Yeah, and that's as much you can ask for as a freshman, right? Because he's 17 years old, by the way, as well. That's incredible to me that he's making a name for himself on a team where he's still like maturing, right? He's still he's 18. He's still growing, probably. So, he's somebody I would definitely keep an eye out for. Like, if I'm gonna say the solution to how to get him in the offense is why not just play him at running back and have him,
I think there's an
slip out, right? If you're going to drop back shotgun pass every down, having somebody like him in the backfield, got to be aware of screens for him, got to be aware of his route running. Like, he's just an athlete, check down, right? Can you imagine checking down in the opening space in the flat to an unmarked Jalen Lucas? If you think he can be a kickoff returner, he can do that. What he can do in the open field is probably amazing. So putting him in there and working him in there is probably something I would like to see as the season goes on. For me, if the team gets better on offense, the player that stands out to me is AJ Barner.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. He hasn't put it all together yet. He's had a couple of really good plays. He's also had some really close highlights. I remember there was a catch he almost had last game that would have been incredible.
Yeah,
he's just a freak athlete, and I ripped on Nick Sheridan for a while, right? But for one thing, he did know how to do, and it's why he got the job at Washington again. I'm sure is he knows his tight ends.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
and AJ Barner was one of those guys he helped bring into IU who's going to just blossom as the year goes on. And he's somebody as an option. It's something, again, I would like to see playing 6 personnel up front and lining up Barner instead of out wide, putting him just so he can maybe put a shoulder into a defensive end, right? Giving Bazelak a little bit more protection on one side of the line or the other, and then him going into his route, because he can do work in space. We've seen him put moves on defenders when he's got open field. So just kind of let him have the field in front of him, and then let Camper and let DJ Matthews and let Jalen Lucas go flying up the field to create space for Barner. That's something I would like to see worked into it. And then last one for me is Josh Henderson.
Yeah.
And the running backs, because a lot of the stuff, again, I don't think the running game is great. I don't think it's on the running back's fault, but I see a lot more tackle breakability, like elusiveness in the short spaces out of Josh Henderson than I do Shivers. He's a guy that can get hit in the backfield and still make it 2 or 3 yards, and we need that. We're going to need that desperately, just so it's not 2nd and 10, 3rd and 11 almost every single drive, because that's just not sustainable. So getting 3-yard chunks here, 2-yard chunks here, I like Josh Henderson to kind of bring in that little bit of a grittiness to the running backs position.
Yep. Sean Shivers had 54 out of the 95 snaps in Indiana's win on Saturday. Josh Henderson had 37. That split is getting narrower and narrower here as the year goes on. So, we'll keep track of that. I love seeing Josh Henderson carry the ball. I feel like he's really settled in to his role. It looks like he's capable of catching the ball out of the backfield as well. He had 37-yard catch in that game on Saturday. He just looks like at the time he looks a little bit right, a little light version, a discount version of Jordan Howard. I see a little bit of that in Josh Henderson's game. Look, lots to talk about this Indiana team. Plenty of areas they can get better at, no question about it. And their first chance to show this improvement will come Saturday afternoon in Cincinnati, Ohio, when the Hoosiers take on unranked Cincinnati. At Nippert Stadium, capacity 37,000. It is a sold-out contest. That game will be on ESPN2. Cincinnati 2-1 on the season. They lost a close game to Arkansas on the road and followed it up with wins over Kennesaw State and Miami, Ohio. Interestingly, the game at Miami, Ohio on Saturday, I should correct myself there, a neutral site game against Miami, Ohio on Saturday. The MAC team, Miami, Ohio, held a lead of 2 scores. They jumped out to a 10-0 and 17-7 lead before Cincinnati wrestled that game away through a pretty effective passing attack, overall balanced offense there to lead them to victory. Luke Fickell is their head coach, Ohio State pedigree, defensive background. He just got his 50th win as the head coach of the Bearcats. Of course, one of those 50 wins came at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington last year under controversial circumstances, where Cincinnati won 38-24. Michael McFadden's targeting ejection turned the course of events in that one. However, this year, Cincinnati is currently, I just checked this a moment ago, a 17-point favorite with the over-under at 54. That means the odds makers have this ending up somewhere in the neighborhood of 35-18 in favor of Cincinnati. Now, a lot of changes for the Bearcats. Quarterback Desmond Ridder, corners Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant. They're off to the NFL. Their running back Jerome Ford is now returning kicks for the Cleveland Browns. Myjai Sanders is in the NFL. Darian Beavers is as well. Alec Pierce didn't play for the Colts in week 2, but he's now starting wide receiver on Indianapolis. Plenty of names to replace on this Cincinnati football team. Their quarterback on Saturday will be Ben Bryant, who began his career, I should say, at Cincinnati. And then in 2021, with Desmond Ridder clearly the starting quarterback, he transferred to Eastern Michigan, had a decent year, and then came back to Cincinnati for the 2022 football season. And so far, he's had a really successful 3 games as Cincinnati's starting quarterback. Even looking back to the Arkansas game, Bryant was 26 of 43 for 325 yards and a couple touchdowns. He did throw an interception in that contest. Lots of talented playmakers on this team. Tyler Scott's a Notre Dame transfer. Josh Wiley, the tight end, could see himself in the NFL. Trey Tucker is a very fast wide receiver. Make it a special teams look at the next level. a lot of quality defensive players. But Charlie, this team is not going to make the college football playoff this year. We'll see how they do in conference play. They've had some rough moments against Arkansas and Miami, Ohio this year. Their offensive line struggles at times. You can throw on them. As you look at this Cincinnati matchup, which Hoosier players are you looking to step up if Indiana is going to keep this close and maybe compete for an upset victory in Cincinnati on Saturday afternoon?
We talked about the secondary that Cincinnati doesn't really have anymore. Obviously they still have I think they still have a safety back there returning.
Yeah. Good safeties back there. No question about it. Javon Hicks, Byron Threat's really good, but corner's a little shaky. Arquan Bush is the mainstay, and you could throw on him.
Yeah. I'm looking for I've talked about wide receivers the whole time we've been on this, so I'm gonna shift over a little bit. I'm looking for not one specific player, but kind of the offensive line to work with Shivers in the backfield and kind of generate the space that we said Shivers needed to take off, because even though this secondary is weak, and I think that IU can exploit them, I think that you have to establish both sides of the ball when you're playing offense, and I think that's on the ground and in the air. And if you can get the ball rolling on the ground, I think IU can then look to start mixing some things up, trying some new tempos, throwing off Cincinnati, and being Cincinnati's like, oh my God, I didn't know you could run the ball and throw the ball. So I think if they establish that with Shivers and the offensive line opening up the holes, the right time, looking to exploit whether or not the linebackers that aren't returning are in, the less experienced guys, I think that you can really generate some offense, get some yardage on the ground, and then go deep to throw them off on the new corners. So I think I'm looking for Shivers in the offensive line to step up.
Matt, how about you? Look, it's going to be a nice day in Cincinnati on Saturday. Right now, the forecast says low 70s, should be clear, should be comfortable. This is going to be Indiana's toughest game by far to this point. Cincinnati will have that group of 5 chip on their shoulder against a Big Ten team, even if they're 17-point favorites. What's the angle here for Indiana if they're going to crack into the mid to upper 20s in this game and put Cincinnati on their back foot?
They're going to have to stop the run, and they're going to have to force Ben Bryant to make plays, which he's done so far this year. But I think individually, our secondary is as good as the teams that they've faced. So they can make plays, because Ben Bryant's not going to beat you running the ball. He's not Spencer. Is it Ritter?
Desmond Ritter, yeah.
Desmond Ritter, not Spencer Ritter. Desmond Ritter from last year, who's just going to pick up first downs with his legs. I mean, Ben Bryant's rushed the ball 15 times for a long of 6. So he's not going to escape you. What you're going to look for is McClellan and Kinner, which is their Kiner. They're kind of duo backs.
Right. Then we'll see what Ryan Montgomery's availability is. He's an electric running back, but week to week.
Yeah. So they kind of have like a duo backfield. If you're hearing their names a lot, probably not a good thing. And I talked about our offensive line being bad, but our defensive line hasn't been too hot either. If I'm going to be honest, they have not lived up to expectations. We talked about, getting JT, what is it? JT Dave? No,
JH
Tevis. I want to say JT Davis. JH Tevis in from Cal and CO and all the guys we have on the defensive line haven't been great so far. Honestly, they've really not lived up to expectations. As I said previously, if they're going to have a good game, it's got to be against Cincinnati here if we're going to pull off a win. So I'm looking at the defensive line to kind of step up.
Yeah, along those lines, who saw the field for 12 plays on Saturday? true freshman Nick James, IMG Academy, 4-star player. He had a really impressive performance in those 12 snaps. So we'll see if Nick James, number 99 up front, gets more looks. But yeah, as you mentioned, Matt JH, Travis, Patrick Lucas, Ladarius Cox, Big CEO, James Head. We'll see how healthy and ready to go he is. And absolutely, you know, one of the areas Indiana can win this game is beating the Bearcats up front when Cincinnati has the ball on offense. And that could force Ben Bryant into some tough situations. That's where I look. Look, the most important position in all of sports is quarterback. And Indiana's not playing a project developmental player at quarterback. You know, Connor Bazelak has an SEC pedigree. He's someone that has gone on the road and had some solid performances. And thinking back to this Kentucky game last season in 2021, look, this is a moment for Connor Bazelak where if you eliminate maybe 5 bad throws that you made against Illinois or against Idaho or against Western, if you can eliminate 5 bad throws, this is exactly the kind of contest that can get you on scout tape for an NFL draft a couple years down the road, right? This is how your evolution to the next level as a quarterback can begin. Here's Ben Bryant, a guy that's graded out really well, a guy that a lot of people are saying, hey, look, Cincinnati may not have had that much of a drop off at QB with Desmond Ridder going to the next level. Show Ben Bryant who the better quarterback is on Saturday. And I want to see Connor Bazelak make those great throws that we saw at the end of Illinois, at the end of Western Kentucky. And I want to see him expand on that and show Missouri fans why they missed out on him and show Indiana fans why they have a quarterback they can believe. And I've got my eye on Connor Bazelak Saturday to shut some people up and to show off his ability. Because if he can do that, you're going to see Indiana get in that close game or maybe even play from ahead a little bit. And all of a sudden, if Cincinnati can become one-dimensional, you know, some IU fans are going to be there as well. Then things can get a little crazy. Look, college football is the farthest thing from predictable this season. So if Bazelak can go out and do some things, we'll see how that plays out. We'll give all of you our prediction in just a moment. And first, it's time for our social media shout out. First and foremost, the Game Time and TV was announced for Indiana's road trip to Nebraska in 2 weeks' time. The Hoosiers will take on the Cornhuskers at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 local on Big Ten Network. It is the homecoming game for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Not sure what they will be celebrating in a couple of weeks down there at Lincoln. But we also want
a new coach.
I mean, they've got to wait, right? And by the way, Luke Fickell, possibly. I don't know. He did sign an extension last season, but I don't think that's really stopped too many people before. Anyway, look, at the end of the day, Indiana, Nebraska, a couple weeks, primetime game, 7:30 Eastern on Big Ten Network. Just a heads up, too, Indiana announced earlier on Monday that IU Athletics has added beer sales to IU men's and women's basketball for this upcoming season. Assembly Hall will be selling alcohol for those fans 21 and over, men's and women's basketball games there. You can take a look at that. Beer was first offered at IU football home games back in 2019. And so you can look forward to that. Folks, a reminder on social media, you can find us at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. On Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we, Matt?
Indiana.HQ.
Exactly. And we've got a lot of good stuff that we put up on our Instagram account. Give us a follow if you have not yet. A lot of folks have just joined us over on our Instagram page. Make sure you do so if you have not already. So, Matt, Saturday, 3:30 tip. Indiana's a 17-point underdog. The odds makers have, 35-18, 36-18, that type of thing. Indiana's not inspiring too much confidence, but the Bearcats are not the CFP version of themselves that Indiana fought back and forth with last season before McFadden's ejection. Who do you think wins and by how much?
Honestly, I think Indiana loses by 30. Yeah. So that's my honest opinion. I don't think Indiana will have a great day. Offensively, I think finally going up against a defense that can actually pressure the quarterback with some consistency is going to spell doom for this team. So my guess, 43-13 Cincinnati.
Charlie, how about you? Look, Indiana is 3-0, and things are look, in a good spot. You had to win the games that you had to win. Is there any chance here that Indiana surprises? Who do you have winning this game and by how much?
I don't have a winner for you, but I have a score. Going 35-25 or 35-24, 35-24. I don't know who's gonna win. I'm leaving it up to the odds, but I'm telling you it's gonna be that close.
All right.
And there's gonna be a winner.
So you're saying Indiana covers, regardless.
Regardless, Indiana covers.
Technically,
okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
Indiana covers.
That's funny. And I think both of you had the over, which right now is at 54. I think both of you had totals going over 54 points in this game. I also think Cincinnati wins. I think this will be, this was a game at the start of the season. I actually had Indiana winning. I think the goal now has shifted here to find a game either at Cincinnati or at Nebraska. You come out victorious. And at the start of the season, I thought it was going to be Cincinnati. But now I think it's going to be, I'm very, very convinced it's going to be Nebraska. Seeing how things have developed over the last few weeks. Cincinnati is really good. But I also think in this spot, for the Hoosiers, a close loss does matter, right? To see this team fight for 4 quarters, even if they end up losing by 10 or 14, if they show improvement on offense, if they show some inventiveness, if they show some improved tackling, if they show that takeaway ability that they've displayed a few times so far this year, then I can feel better about their chances of beating Nebraska and feel better about their chances of beating Maryland and feel better about their chances ending the season with the win over Purdue. And so I think more so on Saturday, I'm focused more on process than the result. Now, hey, look, if we find that Indiana's in a tie game in the 4th quarter, that changes everything. At the end of the day, though, I actually have the under in this game. I think Cincinnati wins it 27-17. I think it's going to be kind of ugly. Like, I don't think Cincinnati's offense is that great. I don't think Indiana's offense is that great. But that's what I have it at. I have it at 27-17 Cincinnati. So we wrap up, folks. A lot of interesting Big Ten games coming up this week. Conference play really gets into the thick of things after a couple of Big Ten matchups early in the season. How about Maryland going up to the Big House to take on the Michigan Wolverines? We have Minnesota as a road favorite at Michigan State. Iowa, a 7.5-point favorite, going to Rutgers coming up this weekend. Wisconsin, Ohio State, which should be a good one, and your fair share of non-conference games as well, including a strange Thursday night kickoff for Illinois against Chattanooga. Charlie, I'm going to start with you. Lots of Big Ten games on the slate. Of course, I'm talking specifically conference matchups. Of all the games involving Big Ten teams, and you look at some of these point spreads, and you look at some of these over-unders, is there an upset pick up your sleeve? What's your favorite Big Ten pick of the week?
My favorite Big Ten pick of the week is Rutgers over Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
I think this Iowa team is overrated. I thought.
Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to lock that in for everyone.
Yeah.
We're just going to lock it in for everyone. I agree completely.
How is Vegas giving them 7.5? How have they watched?
No idea.
How have they watched any Big Ten football and gone, yes, I believe in Iowa at all?
Have they even scored 7.5?
They did this weekend. They did. They scored 2 touchdowns on offense.
I completely agree, especially when you consider it's a primetime game for Rutgers under the lights. I can tell you, Rutgers is building up some positive vibes here for the first time in a while. Look, I completely agree. We're just going to throw that across the board. If you're a little bit risk averse, you can take Rutgers to cover the 7.5 or 7 if it drops down to that, or 6.5 if it drops down to that. I think Rutgers is going to take care of covering the spread, and I think they're very much capable of winning straight up in that game. So funny. I'm happy we all agree to the same thing there. But otherwise, looking forward to a jam-packed weekend of conference action across college football with some non-conference peppered in. Matt, as we wind down here on this Monday night, any closing thoughts from you? Look, lots to digest as far as IU football is concerned. They did, it is mission accomplished through 3 games at 3-0. Generally a healthy football team with the exception of Matt Bedford's injury. What are your closing thoughts here on this Monday night?
I got a 3-part closing part.
Let's go.
Closing thoughts. 1, Indiana is an interesting team. We'll just put it that way. It's been a roller coaster so far. Saturday, most likely will also be a roller coaster because it's Indiana football and that's what it does. So just enjoy it. If we're losing, drink. Okay, on to part 2.
Or if they win.
Or if they win, drink. It is just drink. It's IU football. Don't stay sober. Second part is I'm never ever betting on Nebraska again. I put money on Nebraska to cover against Oklahoma, and they ruined my hopes and dreams. So thank you. But I will go back to being a degenerate gambler this week, and I will tell you I have a second upset pick because we had the Rutgers Iowa game. Give me Miami of Ohio over Northwestern in Northwestern. Northwestern's one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country. Of course, we don't play them this year, the year that they're terrible. Give me Miami of Ohio winning on the road. So there you go.
We were close to playing Northwestern. That game was yanked from our schedule, replaced by Illinois, because Northwestern had their bye week granted to them after playing overseas against Nebraska to start the season. Otherwise, Northwestern would have opened the year in Bloomington in week 1 instead of Illinois. Charlie, how about you? Floor is yours. Anything on your mind here as you wind down on this Monday night?
IU is the most entertaining team in college football, and I think they're going to uphold that reputation. I didn't say they're the best team. Most entertaining team in terms of being awful, being incredible, and winning football games. I think that this weekend they are going to show people a side of them that nobody's seen. Tom Allen's been hyping it up for weeks. We're better than this. Our defense needs improvement. Our offense needs improvement. We're going to work on it and come back. Every time they come back, they are somehow putting themselves in situations worse than the week before and still pulling it off. I think that this weekend's going to be different. I think that they worked hard at practice. I can feel it. I think that IU, to all the haters, I think IU is a team that can make it happen with a little bit of will and a lot of luck. So I think that IU is going to give Cincinnati a show. Don't know if they're going to win. Be really cool to see them win. But I think they're going to give them a game. And it's their first, is it at 4 o'clock? 4 p.m., 4:30? 3:30. It's their first 3:30 kickoff. No time like the present to start playing well. The first 3:30 kickoff. Started off with a W.
You sweet summer child. You sweet summer child. Oh my.
Can I just look? I think it's ridiculous that Cam Jones has played 3 insane games this season and still has not been recognized as a Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week by the Big Ten. It's absolutely absurd. I mean, here is someone who is playing his brains out. I mean, just a spectacular force at the linebacker position, versatile threat, pass rush, coverage, tackling, taking the football away, forcing takeaways. If this guy's not on NFL draft boards in a few months, I don't know what they're scouting. I said the same thing about Charlie Campbell. If this guy's not an all Big Ten level linebacker when the season ends, I know Jack Campbell at Iowa is really good. I know there are a couple of other candidates as well, but Cam Jones has absolutely met that level, if not exceeded it. We'll see how this tracks over the course of the year. But my God, I mean, at some point, I hope the Big Ten realizes that Cam Jones is a deserving football player as far as recognition is concerned. Maybe this Saturday is his chance to make that splash and get recognized after I'm assuming another 10 or 12 tackle contest. I'm sure he'll probably tack on a couple, half a tackle for loss or 1 or 2 tackles for loss. And he'll just add another great game to his ledger. I absolutely love watching him play. Absolute game changer. And thank goodness that Tom Allen and Chad Wilt have him on this football team. But that about wraps it up for our 264th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to find it all in one place. You can also go over to our website, indianahq.com. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.